Welcome to our CloudBadging ID badge design and print software training video series. In this video, we'll focus on records of information. CloudBadging is designed to allow users to create a record of data for each badge that you need to produce. The system uses the record you create, as well as a template that you design, to allow users to print badges. So where we're going to want to begin here is by going to the Records screen. And here on the Records menu, what I can do is a variety of things, largely create and modify records. Now first let's orient ourselves on the screen. When you first come to the Records screen, there are submenus that you'll potentially need to use. There's the All Records submenu, Create Record, and Import, Export, and Delete Records. Now if you don't see any data listed below, it's possible that you just simply haven't created any records of data yet. But what you might also need to do is to change the view to be looking at the appropriate data set that you've already populated. To do that, you just click on this drop-down arrow and then choose the data set you want to look at. You may also want to adjust the number of records that are displaying per page. You can have either 10, 25, 50, or 100 records per page. Here I can toggle the columns of information that actually display on the screen. So if I wanted to turn them all off, I could. You probably don't want to do that though. I'll leave that on with all of those pieces of information. I can also search these records. To do that, over here on the left, you'll see there's this search window that I can minimize if I don't need to search the system. But if I do, what I can do is to expand that out. And here I'll choose the field that I want to search on, the operator of information that I'm going to use to search, so either an equals, which would be an exact pattern match, or contains, which is going to try to find a record that has whatever pattern you've entered in for the search term as a part of that. Here I'll say equals. And then the search term itself is going to be whatever you're looking for. So first name, I may very well look for something like Jeremy. Do note that the search term here, this is case sensitive. So uppercase J and lowercase, the rest of the name Jeremy, is different than all lowercase Jeremy. Just keep that in mind. I'll clear that search. Next, what we're going to do is create a record. There's really two ways to create records in the system. The first is by manually creating a record of information, typing data in to a web form. And the second is by creating records of information, typically in bulk, where you're using a data file that you've created to get that data into the system. But we'll start with just creating a record one at a time. So I'll click Create Record. And here what I need to do initially is to indicate which of the data sets I want to create a record in. I'll stick with the default data set here. And then for each one of these pieces of information, I just type in some data. Here's an ID number, here's my first name, my last name, whatever level, top level I guess we'll say here, title, Customer Success Manager, photos of that sort of information, non-text type of information or numeric data. We can get that into the system too. There's two options. The first is if the file already exists, you can browse your file system, go into that folder where those files are, and then upload the photo that corresponds with the record that you're creating. It takes a few seconds here, depending upon your network conditions, and you'll see there's a photo. What I can also do is if the device that I'm connecting to CloudBadging from has a camera that is functional, I can use that camera here from CloudBadging to take a picture and pull it into the record. Now I worded that kind of oddly. I said the device that you're connecting from. Keep in mind that this is a web-based system, software as a service, which means that at the end of the day, really what you're doing is you're connecting to this from, a computer or device that has a web browser and a connection to the internet. That means things like smartphones and tablets are definitely a possibility here. And so what you could do is use those types of devices as well to log into the system, create a record, and as you're doing that, you can use the camera that's integrated within that smartphone or tablet to take the picture and help create the record. Here, if I wanted to choose some dates, I could enter those in. I'm not going to in this example. I'll just click Create Record. As soon as you do that, it creates the record and takes you back to the All Records menu. And here I can see a summary of the record that I just created. I also see I've got a couple of options here now, an edit link and a print link. Print we'll talk about in a subsequent training video. But the edit link, let's talk about that. Why would I go into this? Well, of course, the most obvious reason is you need to change some of the data. Maybe the ID number you typed in was wrong or misspelled a name, whatever it might be. But also interestingly is if you scroll down to the bottom of the record, you'll see some information on that record, the record history, when it was created, when it was last updated, as well as the print history. Some folks want to be able to determine if a record has been printed or not, and so we'll indicate that here. Okay, so the next thing is let's talk about how to create records in bulk. Quite frequently, folks, when they start to use cloud badging, they're migrating to cloud badging from some other existing software. And quite frequently, they want to migrate that data right along with it. And to do that, what you'll need to do first is to export your data from your existing system out of that system as a CSV file. Now, if you've never heard of a CSV or comma-separated values file, don't worry. Your IT people have. It's a pretty standard file type for this sort of work. Not anything to be terribly concerned with. What it looks like is kind of what it sounds like, really. It's a comma-separated values data file. And here's an example of what that looks like. You'll see I've got a column of information here in my top row, and then or column headers of information, I should say, and then all the specific data for each of the records that I am intent upon creating listed below. And you'll see that between each of those different pieces of information is actually a comma that is separating the different values in the file, thus the name comma-separated values data file. Now, Notepad is not the only application you could use to create a CSV file. Probably the most commonly used application to do something like that is Microsoft Excel or a spreadsheet type of an application. But suffice it to say, again, your IT staff, if you're not familiar with the CSV, they'll know what it is. If you don't have IT staff, just give us a call and we'll help talk and walk you through the process of getting that data. Now, let's actually do the import of data. You'll see that currently I've got one record of information here in my default data set. I want to import other records of information from my existing system. So the first step there is to go to the Import, Export, and Delete Records. Next, I click on Import Data. Step one is to indicate the data set I want to populate data in. Well, I'm going to leave that as my default data set. Here under step two, I'm going to indicate the CSV file that I have prepared. So let me go ahead and grab that file. Now, I mentioned that I had a header row in my CSV file. I strongly recommend you have one as well. On the next screen, the final step of the import process, we actually have to map data from the CSV file to the data elements that we've defined in our data set. And if you don't have column headers in there, it can be extremely difficult. So do yourself a favor and put a column header in there. Next, if you're going to be importing images, quite frequently these are ID, so you need a headshot of some sort or maybe a signature file or fingerprints. You know, there's quite a few things that folks sometimes need to print, particularly for our friends in law enforcement. But if you do need to get those images in, what you'll need to do first is create a folder, put all your image files in that folder, and then zip or compress that folder. The maximum size of that compressed folder cannot exceed 200 megabytes. If you do have a situation where you have more than 200 megabytes of files in your zipped folder, you'll need to break them up into smaller chunks and then do multiple imports. So it's not a showstopper, it's just you need to just break it up into smaller consumable chunks. So what I'll do here is I'll browse out to my file system where I've got my photos zip file or compressed folder ready to go. Here I've got an option where if I want to overwrite existing images with the same name, meaning if I'm doing, say, a yearly refresh of everybody's picture, what I might want to do is import a new image and then just have it overwrite whatever was currently being stored in the cloud badging system. If that's what you want, then you'll want to check this box. Down here on step 4, we've got our last step before we actually do the mapping of the data. We're going to start the import. Now next what I'm doing is mapping the data. So what I need to do is here on the left, all the different data elements that I defined in this data set will be listed. And then over here on the right are drop-downs where it's looking at the CSV file that we've supplied for this import process. And it's saying, okay, well these are the column headers of information that I see. Again, this is why you want to do that, so you can more easily associate these data fields in your CSV with the system fields that you've defined in the data set. If you don't give a column header in your CSV file, what you'll see here is column 1, column 2, column 3, and so on. And to be honest with you, that's not really easy. So I would really strongly recommend you put in column headers. And then here I'll just finish this off by getting all of these data elements mapped. Then I click Start Import, and then you'll see a little progress bar will appear. That was pretty quick. Of course, we're only importing 5 records. Your results may vary depending upon local network conditions and the number of records you're talking about importing. But for the most part, this shouldn't take more than 10 to 20 minutes. It may very well take a while, though, if you're importing thousands and thousands of records. That's going to take a lot longer than 5 records. So just plan accordingly. Okay, so let's go back to the Import, Export, and Delete Records submenu and talk about how to export data from the system. What you'll want to do is, actually I'll just go back to the Records menu itself. And first you'll see that I'm going to prove to you that we did in fact import records of information into our default data set. You can see those additional 5 records. We've now got 6 records in here. What you want to do, though, when you're exporting data is you need to make sure that the data set that you're exporting is the active data set here in the records screen. And then I'll go back to my Import, Export, Delete Records submenu, click on Export Data, and at this point it's pretty simple. Do you want the images that are a part of your records to be exported as well or not? And then at that point you just click Export. And then what happens is it pops up a little message saying, hey, we're going to send you an email to your email address that's associated with your user account. And what you'll then be able to do once you get that email is you'll be able to download that CSV file as well as that zipped or compressed folder of file images. How long does that take? Well, again, it kind of depends on how many records of information we're talking about, but you can expect that process to go pretty quickly as well. It should be a matter of just a few moments. Again, if you're exporting thousands and thousands of records, though, it may take several minutes for that email to be generated. So just give it some time. Okay, final thing here with the records menu is deleting records in bulk. There's a couple ways you can do that. Back here from the records screen itself, what I could do is just select all those records and then click delete, and that'd be one way to do that. Another way that if I want to delete records in bulk is simply by clicking on remove all records, and of course it's going to say, are you really sure you want to do that? Maybe do you want to export your records first? We kind of prompt you to hopefully not do anything that you didn't mean to do. I'll cancel that, but that's just another way that you can remove all records in a data set. Do keep in mind that the individual user permissions, you can restrict access to this to make it a little less likely that somebody might accidentally delete records in bulk. But just be aware that that functionality does exist, and you want to make sure that your users are aware of that so they don't unintentionally do something that they didn't mean to. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching our video on records of information. You can view more cloud badging training videos from our Cloud Badging ID badge design and print software training video series to learn how to maximize your use of this ID card printing software. Thank you.